In 2025, America is filled with so many people, each one intersecting between different identities. How does being trans intersect with being Black? How does being disabled intersect with being a member of the LGBTQ community? How do all of these identities influence how you navigate your life? Critical Mass is a show about people, identity, and the human need to connect. Today, I'm sitting down with Arden Hart, producer and host at The Line, a YouTube-based call-in show network focused on atheism, skepticism, and humanism. Arden hosts the Transatlantic call-in show every Thursday, where she and other hosts debate about the science behind gender and sex. In our conversation, we explore what it's like being a trans advocate during one of the most hostile political climates for LGBTQ+ rights in recent memory. I'm Jovan Bradley, and this is Critical Mass. And now it feels awkward. Hi, Arden. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. Listen, we're gonna roll with this being a very loose format show. This is season 1, so I'm not worried about coming off as super professional just yet.
Listen, these character designs aren't ironed out yet. In season 2, they're going to be drawn totally differently. So,
already I'm going to get on a tangent. Do you know what I think is the worst culprit of that? And
what?
It's so hard for me to watch season 1 of Steven Universe because of how different the character designs are in season 1.
Yeah.
I can't stand it.
Yeah, there's a lot of shows like that. I don't, especially if you look at like the season 1 of Family Guy. Not that I'm recommending Family Guy is like the best show ever or whatever, but man, those models are so different back then. You're like, sometimes like their eyes are drawn in front of their nose in weird ways, and it's like,
Did you see the one where they go back in time to the first episode?
I don't think so. I haven't watched Family Guy in years.
An episode of Family Guy where Stewie and Brian go back in time, and how they do it is that when they go back in time, it's the first episode again, and everything's drawn like the first episode.
Yes! It's so good.
It's actually one of their best episodes, low-key.
Oh, that's really satisfying for like animation lovers. That's cool.
But anyway, welcome to the show, Arden. Me and you met recently. This is a very new best friendship. I say best friendship because we have so many of the same interests, except for your love of reptiles, but we won't get into that.
I'll turn you on, don't worry.
Before we start, I just want to say I have now been watching a bunch of you guys' stuff on The Line. I knew about you, obviously. For anyone that doesn't know, can you tell us a little bit what The Line is, what you do at The Line, and how you got involved in that?
Yeah. So The Line is a call-in show network on YouTube. We have, I think, 6 different shows that we do regular programming per week. And the kind of 3 big tenets of The Line are atheism, skepticism, and humanism. So pretty much all the hosts we bring on have some kind of expertise, and generally are referring to like empirical data to make our cases. Like we try to have people be really grounded in like skepticism and science and rational thought, but also advocating for humanist principles. So like, that's why we do a lot of trans advocacy. Most of our hosts are very, very left-leaning, politically speaking, because we all care a lot about human rights and the well-being of the population, making as many people as good as possible. And I got there through, there used to be an organization, well, they're still operating, but we have beef with them now, but it's fine. They're called the Atheist Community of Austin. They used to do atheist call-in shows, and few years ago, there was just some drama. We don't need to get into that, but we kind of split ways. And I went with The Line. And after hosting there for several years, they brought me on as like their producer. And I started editing all our videos and producing our live shows. And Yeah, I've been there now for 4 years. So
Yeah. Like I said, I just recently started to like because obviously I knew about the line, I knew
Mhm.
about Forrest, and I knew about Matt.
Mhm.
Um and I hadn't really watched because I'm very careful about what other debaters I watch because I don't want to just siphon arguments from other people. I really
Totally.
want to be good about like crafting my own, even though obviously every argument has probably always already been used. So you're always going to be using something from somebody else. Um, but after our stream, I was like, oh, let me start watching a little bit more of this. And I love the format you guys do. There's some stuff you guys do that I'm gonna steal.
Hell yeah.
Sorry,
Do
reverse
it.
colonization. Uh, but I really obviously respect the craft because, debating is what I do. It's how I got into everything.
Mhm.
And I really like how you guys handle things. I think it was so funny because obviously after our stream, I was talking to you about like just the difference that I feel in our I don't want to say clientele, but in our callers and the people
Oh
who
yeah.
reach out. The day after our stream, when I did live of my own, I had someone defending using the N word. So it's so different.
I mean, we have so nobody really calls into our shows to like defend using the N word. We do get like trolls who will just come in and drop a bunch of slurs and stuff, but I think we weeded a lot of them out because we one hang up on them immediately. We don't even entertain the call, and then I usually go back and cut it out of the YouTube final edit. So our thing we did like spent like a year and a half being like, "Hey, good job! You waited on the line for 2 hours for something that nobody will ever know you did." So like you just wasted 2 hours of your life for nothing, and that kind
This
of
is
stopped it. I think.
this is such the difference because I feed into it. I'm like, oh yeah, no, please continue. Go ahead. I can see the video title in my head.
Right.
Do say what you have to say. I have to get better about bleeping slurs out on my YouTube page. I don't bleep out what people say at all. I don't know how I don't know how my videos stay monetized at all.
I think there's an advantage to what you do too, though. I mean, like it's interesting. I think to show people how you're showing up with like an argument. You make your case, like a logical argument, premise one, premise two, conclusion. Whereas they're coming in and just saying slurs. And I think that's also moving to people to be like, oh wow, they have so little to say in regards to actually making a case for their position that they just default to slurs. And that's compelling to people as well.
Obviously, with the state of the world right now, specifically the state of the US, things are getting tough. I mean, Texas just tried to introduce a bill that would almost 100% make it illegal to be transgender. You
Mm-hmm.
have Donald Trump going on rant after rant about trans people, about the LGBTQ community. How do you, as a trans person who's not only going to feel the brunt of this, but putting yourself on the line, not to be cheeky, um, but putting yourself out there to defend your community in this way? How have you been navigating that?
Well, not to steal from our dear leader Musk, but with great difficulty. Um, our editor who knows the recent Elon Musk will hopefully interview will get that. So for me, it's always kind of been like a compulsive thing. Um, I have always had progressive politics. Like I remember being as young as like 12 and like seeing I don't remember the exact situation. I'm not going to represent it completely accurately, but there was some sort of person who needed help, and I was like, why don't we give them help? Like that's something we can do as like a people. And my dad was like, oh, and a Democrat was born. And ever since then, there's always just been like a fire in my gut that was like, if it's so wrong, I want to help people, then I will proudly be wrong. Like, I don't see what could possibly be the problem with wanting people to do well and to have long, healthy lives. I watch other people engage in this discussion and maybe not necessarily handle it in the way that I think is the best. And um, I just feel like I have to be involved. Like it's kind of be the change you want to see, I guess. I'm not seeing anyone do it in the way that I think is compelling to me. So I want to make sure that that voice is out there.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully it can reach people who are moved on things the way that I moved on things.
Do you think, looking at like the landscape of where the country's headed, do you do you get worried for your own safety? I mean, putting yourself. I don't throw your whole government. I use my full
Mhm.
government name on the internet. I go by the name the slave masters gave me. Do you ever worry about like safety and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, just like a couple months ago, the Lion got a stalker after like a really bad call who started emailing Matt and the owner Jimmy and one of the hosts who was on that episode with threats, and they had to call the FBI, who luckily at the time were very helpful. I don't know how helpful they would be now, but um, yeah, I mean, I'm constantly paranoid. I think much more so than a lot of our other hosts, to be honest. I've been trying to kind of help integrate some better cybersecurity and safety protocol into my daily life, even if it's cumbersome. And yeah, I mean, it's scary out there. Um, but I don't know if I could keep my mouth shut until they drag me by my hair and throw me into Guantanamo. So, I'm going to just, if it's one of those things where it feels like there's no solution, it's sit down and take their punches one after another and just try to ignore it and try to live a normal life, or I can fight back to the best of my ability. I mean, I'm not doing necessarily as much as I've done in the past. Like I used to be super active at like in-person, rallies and protests and counter protests and things like that. When I was in Rhode Island, living in Rhode Island, we had a great community there of like local activists who would bus people up to like, the DNC in New Hampshire back in, was it 2020, I think, the election we went and did that. And there was like the Straight Pride Parade in Boston. We did a bunch of counter protests organizing at.
Well, the problem is it's getting so dangerous now to
Yeah.
protest. I mean, let's face it, we're experiencing an administration that is quite literally jailing people. I mean,
Yeah.
Mahmoud Khalil, he is still in prison in a
Right.
different state away from his wife and unborn child, not charged with a crime. He has not been charged with anything. He's not been formally charged with any sort of crime except for them saying, well, he sided with terrorists, which is untrue. He sided with Palestinian people, not with Hamas, and we're experiencing this, the free speech side being very anti-free speech.
Right.
How often do you guys, because I mean, I get messages all the time on my stream just telling me to stop talking. People trying to get my stream shut down. It's very interesting that the free speech side really hates it when the opposition says anything.
I don't know. We get hate comments all the time. I find people who are like terminally online hating kind of funny to me. I like to take advantage of them a little bit, especially if they're in the comment section, because those people can't help but reply. And I'm like, every time you send back another one, I want you to know that I win. You help my algorithm, and I'm squeezing you dry of all the engagement I can. Yeah, when it comes to like fears of like real threats, it's definitely a thing. But I don't know. We're in this kind of stage right now where you have situations like what was the name again? I'm going to totally pronounce it wrong.
Mahmoud
Khalil.
Khalil.
Khalil. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, you have situations like that where it's like, oh wow, we really are just kind of jailing dissidents at this point already. But then there's so many things that are held up in courts, and then there's the concern of, are they even going to listen to the courts? It's really hard to strategize, I feel like, right now, of how to even best prepare yourself for what kind of enforcement mechanisms to quiet us are going to be coming down the pipeline, because we don't really know yet. So in my mind, I'm kind of just in a don't comply in advance mindset and just trying to keep hammering at it for as long as I'm realistically able to. Yeah.
Would you say what would you say is the biggest challenge that you think right now, like coming from the side of trans people? Obviously you hear more than most the arguments and the positions of the other side. What do you
Mhm.
think is the biggest challenge right now we'll start with just in educating. Like, what do you think is the biggest misconception and the hurdle that we have to get through?
Oh, goodness. I mean, probably it's something really basic like the difference between gender and sex. I mean, it seems like the opposition holds a deeply gender essentialist view, which when you break it down philosophically, I mean, I've seen you do it, I've done it, I've seen other like progressive sort of philosophical content creators break down the problems of biological essentialism. It's internally inconsistent. There's so many holes in it. There's so many people who you have to like miscategorize to keep it consistent. You know, you have to accept that men can be pregnant, but not trans men. Like some sort of intersex Swire syndrome individual is the man who can get pregnant in their worldview. Kind of getting them to a baseline. But I mean, there's also the element of just they don't view trans people as human. Like, is what it feels like to me. I mean, you know, when we're talking about like Trump is saying, you know, everyone's getting transgender surgeries. I think a better example is back during the election, right? They used this notion of this immigrant in prison who had received some sort of surgery as this ridiculous proposition that no one should accept, that successfully moved a good amount of voters, compelled them to vote for Trump, at least in a few areas. When you really look at what that situation is, it's not actually controversial, right? Everyone knows that prisoners, people in the custody of the state, we are obligated to give them healthcare. That's something like that, like we as American people have decided we should do. But because this person was trans and an immigrant, you have extremely progressive people like the you know, Pod Saves America bros who are like, oh, you know, these ridiculous positions that the ACLU forced Kamala to take. And I'm like, giving evidence-based healthcare to a person in the custody of the state is not a ridiculous proposition. You think it's ridiculous because you don't view me as human and you don't view our healthcare and our well-being as legitimate. But it is not a ridiculous position. It's pretty trivial when you actually really look into what that situation is.
Yeah, I've seen this notion going around. I saw it like super spouted by like Bill Barr and like some other old school progressives who go, and I'm not a Democrat, but they go, well, the Democratic Party, you know, they're leaning too left. They're going too left with all the trans stuff. And I'm like, how is it too left to like position human rights?
Right.
They get so up in arms about the sports, about kids, about all of these things. And it's like, at least to me, I'm like, this is just basic human decency, right? Allowing parents to make medical decisions for their kids, basic human decency. Telling schools they can't out a child to parents, especially if they don't know that the parents are safe. Probably basic human decency. Allowing people over the age of 18 to decide their health care. Basic human decency. But we keep going back and forth between hardcore conservatives who made trans people a focal point of this last election, because it wasn't the Democrats.
Correct.
Kamala mentioned trans people like what, twice on the campaign trail? So it's this movement led by conservatives, LGB without the T, the nonsense. And then you have the progressives going, well, clearly we're going too hard in this direction. And it's like, well, this is how we got the 3/5 compromise, guys. It's
Yes.
Literally, it's the same thing.
Yeah. And it's silly too, because, you know, like what trans people are advocating for realistically doesn't impact cis people almost at all. I've often been saying, like, I wish I didn't have to talk about these things. There are things that are far more interesting in my life. Like I told you on Tacus, like I have my reptile obsession. I would love to spend like all of my time working with reptiles, and I love doing art. I love the production side of content creation, like editing. That is so much fun to me. It's kind of grueling, but like I like it. I genuinely love that, what I do for my job. And I wish that so much of my time didn't get sucked into needing to, you know, it's like the joke that trans people say where we have to know like a little bit of everything. I have to understand biology, you know, at a above average level. I have to understand the legal system. I have to understand like chemistry and like how fetuses develop, and all these different like topics, and synthesize that to be a good trans advocate. And that's time that gets taken away from me learning more about reptiles and learning more about like the other things that interest me. So, or, spending time honing my craft in art or anything like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little frustrating, but in my eyes, like I can't relax and enjoy those things until a lot of these burdens are lifted. And I know there's a whole generation of trans kids now who's, wow, I always thought they would have a lot better of a life than I do, but I think they're ostensibly going into a time where they're going to have it harder than I did somehow.
Well, it's
And so,
almost like
I just can't stop right now,
it's almost like now because in the past trans people weren't the focal issue, and now it's
Right.
almost like because they're so honed in on. I mean, how many videos have I seen now of cisgender women getting accosted in a bathroom? Because I watched one the other day where two cisgender men walked into the women's room because they thought a trans person was going in there. And I'm like, so you went into the women's room as men because you were mad that you thought a man had gone into the women's room.
Right. To intimidate a woman for going in the women's restroom.
I worry, especially as we go deeper and deeper into this administration. I mean, we're only at 50 days just about, and we're seeing more legislation, we're seeing more animosity, we're seeing just this upward tick in bigotry. And I obviously worry about trans kids and youths who are coming into this. What do you think is the best course of action for like somebody who's young, who 14, 15, who is trans, who might be afraid?
The first thing is to take a look at the people around you. So not getting into my whole transition story right this second, if we end up going that way in a little bit, that's fine. But I spent a lot of my time denying myself who I was because I wanted the approval of my family and my peers who I was around at the time. And when I eventually went to college and found a community that was really loving and supportive and truly valued me for who I am as an individual, that was where I started to feel safe enough to come out because I had a community that I knew was going to lift me up kind of no matter what. Right. And I just really want young people who are maybe in situations like I was to know that, like, let's assume they take away our ability to transition or something, right? Like, that doesn't mean that you aren't who you are, and that doesn't mean you can't live your life, but it does mean in order to do so, you are going to need to find those people. You're going to need to find your chosen family. And like right now, local communities, tight-knit communities, that's going to be what's going to get us through a fascist regime like that. Like, especially, surveillance is going to go up inevitably with a regime like this. And I think you're really going to need to value those like person-to-person, peer-to-peer relationships a lot more. And you're going to need to surround yourself with people who value you. So yeah, if you're feeling like you're needing to constantly earn people's approval or like bid for their acceptance, I would say that those are probably not your chosen family. And you need to start looking for people who just kind of let you be you and don't expect you to perform or just justify yourself or defend yourself in a particular way,
Yeah. And I feel like, we're seeing so much about how this administration is willing to just like dial in. I mean, we saw it with like Hunter Schafer having her passport changed. Obviously, she didn't request that. So they're going to be making these unilateral decisions. And the worst part is watching them do it based off of no science and no evidence. I mean, we've talked about Trump's executive order that turned everybody female, basically, because they don't understand the science behind basic human sexual development. And it's not even just the science on that. Like when we're talking about like children, they don't understand how psychologically children develop. And it's so worrisome. And I think you're so right about like the community thing. I mean, to be very upfront, I was very transphobic, homophobic, all the phobias and isms back when I was as late as high school.
Yep.
It wasn't until I got into theater and was surrounded by these groups of people that I had never been around that I started to be like, oh, I'm the jerk. I'm the bad person here. So I think it's so tough. I saw a video today. I'm gonna see if I can send it to you. They were doing like a board or like a town hall meeting or something with a community about some proposed bill that would make it harder for trans people. And a lot of people came out to talk against it.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was eventually this really older, like 80-year-old guy comes in and was like, yeah, I was asked to come here to talk about my being in favor of this bill. But after I sat here for the past couple of hours and listened to these people speak, I was wrong. And watching something like that in a time where so many people refuse to use empathy to like guide their decision making processes was very powerful. Um, it didn't make me go, I'm going to start leading with empathy. I'm still going to call Trump supporters fascists and dumb. But
Yeah.
it did make me go, like, yeah, there is something to be said about just what community and what a diverse community will do for you.
Mm-hmm.
And how diversity and equity and inclusion are good things because it leads to tolerance, it leads to betterment of ideas, it leads to all of these things. So it's really tough watching our current administration go so hard against all of those things.
Yeah. And it's something kind of what you're touching on is something that I've been trying to incorporate more into my process. I don't know if I'm really successful at it yet, but which is kind of talking a little bit more about personal stories a little bit when I'm doing this stuff, because
Mhm.
I have a habit of what appeals to me is logical arguments and empirical evidence. So I tend to default to the science. Oh, well, this body of medical experts, based on a review of the evidence, came to this conclusion. What makes you think that you know better than, 20 experts who spent 10 years getting an education in medical science who came to this conclusion? Like, I'm sorry, but I'm going to take their word over, the dude who didn't graduate high school. But I also think at the same time, talking about those personal stories is really what is compelling to people in a lot of cases. Like just kind of a quick touch on my story. I came out to my mom first when I was about 14. And she didn't know what to do. Nobody in my community had ever heard of a trans person before. So she did the best she could with the resources that she had. And I kind of started to transition as a young teenager, but the harassment was so bad that I was like, oh, no, I'm going to stuff that back down in the closet.
Mhm.
And, like that was the experience of a lot of detransitioners, where like the reasons they detransition is not because they were like, oh, I was taken advantage of by the, trans lobby. I walked into a doctor's office and they injected me with a vial of testosterone. Like, no, that's not really what happens. Like, it's more of what I went through, where you're getting rejection from your community, your like your faith community for a lot of people, or like your place of work or education. And those are the kind of things that cause a lot of people to go like, wow, I mean, forcing myself to be a man is miserable, but being out as myself causes me to get abuse. So like, what is the better option? Like they
Yeah.
both kind of feel like they suck. But the reality is that being trans isn't what sucks. It's how people treated me that
Mhm.
sucked. And I think eventually, as I got older, I kind of learned that and was able to be like, well, people might treat me like garbage or they might not. But regardless, it doesn't change who I am as a person. And so definitely trying to bring more of that kind of personal, empathetic root into the conversation, I think is going to be helpful to people. Because like I also saw Zoe Zephyr, the state representative in Montana. She's a trans woman and she was defending or testifying against some of the bills that were being proposed. And even some of her Republican colleagues were standing up and being like, oh, yeah, I'm not so sure that I support this bill anymore. I saw Zoe here with her child last week and he was really sweet and she really loved him. And so like, I think we might be missing the mark on this one, and I think those stories are going to be more compelling to people. And also talking about the fact that like, every moment they spend talking about trans people, they spend talking about me, 1% of the population at most, is a time that they're not spending making your housing prices lower, making
Yep.
groceries more affordable, making your healthcare more accessible. making sure your grandparents can pay their bills with their social security check. Like every issue that actually matters to the American people with regard to the economy and our quality of life is a moment that they didn't spend focusing on that, making your life better, that they focused attacking people like me for no real reason. And you know, like like I said, I'm very privileged. I think I might pay for my healthcare out of pocket. I'm probably going to be one of the last people to lose my healthcare, but I'm still afraid. Like it's still likely to happen to me. So yeah.
Well, and it's, you know, I think it's why I outwardly call this administration fascist, because one of the key characteristics of fascism is this heavy attack on a group that I don't want to say can't defend themselves, but a group that is vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And using this group as a scapegoat. And every problem now is either it's the immigrants, it's trans people, or it's DEI. That's the only thing that's causing all of the prices to go up. This is what's causing all of the wars in the world. This is what caused Elon Musk's rocket to explode. It's trans people, immigrants, and DEI. And it's, you know, looking at it obviously from the outside is so frustrating, because I'm like, if you guys used 1 ounce of brain power, you would see what the actual problems are. You would know that it's not the little 14-year-old kid who just wants to live as themselves and not feel terrible. Like you mentioned, coming out to your mom when you were young. When did you start to have these feelings of, you know, knowing you were different, knowing you weren't the gender that was prescribed to you by doctors and society and family and all of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, it wasn't a super linear journey. I went to a private Christian school growing up. My parents weren't really religious in practice, but I think they just thought that this was going to be a better education for me than the public school system. So, it was very religious. We had Bible class every day for the first 8 years of my education. And I remember really, really early on, as young as like 4 or 5, my cousins I have a lot of female cousins, like probably like 2/3 of my cousins are female, and all the ones that were closest to me were girls. So we would play dress up, right? They would dress me up. I was like the doll of the family. So I was also the baby for a really long time. And I remember looking like a girl. And there's a few key memories. Like one of them, at our school, we had right before the holiday break what was called Red and Green Day, right? Wherever all the kids dressed in red and green, every class stood on the stage and we did like a competition for who had the most holiday spirit. And this was, I think, first grade. My cousin painted my nails for me. I asked her to. And when I got up on stage, I went like this in front of everyone. And I got reprimanded by like my teacher and my father that that's not how men show off their nails. You got to do it like this to be manly. That was like one formative memory where I was like, oh, who I am is maybe a problem for these people a little bit. And the second one was another time where my cousin Ed was dressing me up. We were about to go do like a fashion show for our moms, right? But her dad was walking around the house, and we had to go through the attic, into the garage, down through the basement, and come around like the bottom of the house to get to our moms, because if he had seen me, he was going to probably yell at and potentially like hit both of us, was the concern. So we were like, that was another formative memory for me where I was like, oh, me being feminine will incur the wrath of men in my life. But then the religious element too, we were told that, being gay was sinful, and all these things kind of came together where I was like, man, I don't think I'm sinful, so I must not be gay or any of those things, but I don't feel like anything is normal. Then a last formative memory on this dirty, this is a terrible movie. I don't think it's good trans representation at all, but Trans America, starring Felicity Huffman. My mom rented that movie when I was, I think, like 9 years old, maybe, not knowing what it was. And it was the first time that it fully hit me, the weight of like, oh, my feeling is that I'm like her. That even though I was born a boy, I want to be a girl or a woman. And if I don't do something about it, I'm going to be like my dad. And that sounds like an absolute nightmare. And that was kind of where I started. I was a kid of the internet. So I started like researching whatever this was to the best of my little undeveloped brain's ability. And it was right before my freshman year of high school that I told my mom that I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm a girl. And like I told you, she didn't know what that was. So she was like, let me find a therapist because I have no clue what you're talking about. I'm proud of her. I mean, even though she was super uneducated, she did find me a good therapist who followed the evidence-based guidelines of the time and kind of helped me navigate that emotion. He did not push me at all. It was like a solid year and a half in therapy before I even got puberty blockers because he really made me work through everything and talk about all those feelings and navigate that space the best I could. So, yeah.
I worry, so much when we see these limits on education, because a lot of people share stories similar to yours. They have these feelings, but they don't know. They don't have the vocabulary, when they're that young to say, hey, I'm feeling this. I have so many people who tell me, well, kids don't know they're trans. And I'm like, yeah, most probably don't. If they don't have someone to look to, if they don't have trans people in their media. I mean, this is why we talk about media representation being so important. Look how it helped you on your journey of self-discovery, and having media that's pause, having media that reflects like what people are actually going through. There's a book that I love. It's called A Short History of Trans Misogyny. It's by Jules Gill Peterson. And in the beginning of the book, she talks about how trans women have been represented in media. She talks about these episodes of Sex in the City and how trans women have been the butt of the joke. And the joke has always been, oh, but they're secretly men.
Right.
And this has sort of permeated. And my biggest blame, I don't know if we talked about this, but when I was on the line, but I blame Jerry Springer and I blame Maury. I think those two shows did irreparable harm to trans representation. So, and I fully believe that without those two shows, I think we would be so much further ahead on things like the bathroom issues, on things like people who think trans people are trying to trick them. Watching those shows, and if you going back and seeing the mockery they make, or how I don't think I've ever seen an episode of that show, Maury or Jerry Springer, where the trans person on the show is not the butt of the joke.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I absolutely remember those shows growing up, seeing Jerry Springer and I'm really dating a man. Like, I'm not sure that it would have, totally changed things, but I do think certain conversations would be very different, like the dating conversation. A lot of men will say something to the effect of, oh, you need to disclose that your trans status to me conceivably before I have any sort of romantic adjacent interaction with you. Which, when you really stop and think about it for a second, is just an absurd expectation to have.
It's many so weird
about a partner. Like, I understand you might want to know, right? There's so many things going into a relationship about partner that it would be nice to know so you can save your time. Because, look, there may or may not be transphobia in excluding trans people from your dating. I'm not interested in hashing that out. I'm not interested in hashing out whether or not it's like transphobic to want to date a trans person or not. I think regardless, you have the right to say, I don't want to date, or I want to date someone for good or bad reasons, right? You want to exclude everyone who cuts their fingernails on Wednesdays. That is a thing you are absolutely entitled to do. And I think you should be empowered to do in like a free society. But yeah, it's this notion of like, I deserve to know this personal information about you before you even know if I'm a person who's safe to be around.
Well, and this is what, I'm just going to throw the shout out again. This is what Jules Gill Peterson talks about in their book. They talk about the trans panic
Yeah.
and how specifically cisgender straight men are so against trans women, besides the fact that they're all secretly attracted to them. Like we know the amount of trans women who do like sex work stuff, who will tell you that there's about their clients who are cisgender straight men. We know.
Oh yeah.
But there's this thing to be said about the perception of ditching masculinity. Masculinity in our society has been so propped up on this pedestal to where men believe that without masculinity, they don't really have a purpose. They don't have a purpose in their personal life if it is not being as masculine as possible. And so, what is the biggest threat to masculinity? To them, it's someone who's willing to throw their masculinity away completely.
Right.
So I fully believe that this, coupled with internalized homophobia, is what's prevalent in leading so much of, at least when we talk about cisgender men, their drive to be like, I have to know, because they will go through, a cisgender man will go through and they'll see someone they like on Instagram and they'll go as far back as they can to confirm that of who they're looking at. And it's so interesting because these are the same people that are like, I can always tell.
Right.
No, you can't.
Yeah, no, definitely, obviously not. And, some people, maybe this is a mistake. I don't know. But this is one of the reasons that the line has such a big focus on like atheism. And because I would argue that a lot of this has some religious roots and origin, not necessarily that these individuals are like devout believers themselves, but rather America culturally is such a Christian nation. I don't think we are in structure a Christian nation. I think there's many good books and arguments against the notion of us being a Christian nation in terms of like our constitution. But I do think culturally a lot of these values come from this sort of religious perspective of like, it's this they have this perspective of sexuality and gender as like two positions on like a switchboard, where when you really look at like our closest ape relatives, right, like bonobos and chimpanzees, even if you go a little bit further back, some forms of monkeys who have a lot of social behavior, cross-gender, homosexual, sexual interactions are so commonplace and universal. And like, sure, are there some monkeys who only like to do it a certain way and some apes who only like to do it a certain way? Absolutely. But like, there's no switch in your brain that says, I only like these parts, right? Like, you have the right to live your life. And I'm sure society has made you feel that way and to pick the partners you want. But in reality, like, brains aren't built that way. Brains are dynamic and fluid and like moving between things you can't control. If you look at a person and go, oh, wow, they're attractive and they made me feel all tingly inside. Even if that isn't a person who you would normally put into your like bucket of people I'm attracted to.
Yeah.
So that is like, I know some people, it's in the broader left community, I think there are still some like sort of religious spiritual tendencies, which, is just human nature. So I don't have anything really particularly negative to say about that. But I would say that I think that most of, or a good portion of those feelings are rooted in sort of a Christian religious culture, in my view.
Touching on, the Christianity side and the religious side, even before I knew what the line was, I had seen so many of the conversations, specifically between Matt and Forrest on like atheism and things like that. Where do you come from when because I know with me, and if this alienates some people, I get it. When I have debates, which I actually think I'm not the greatest theologist debater. I do very bare bones arguments because I'm like, this book is silly as hell. And I'm just like, I don't know why y'all like this. But when I come from it, people ask me all the time, they're like, Jovan, why do you specifically target Christianity? Because I don't talk about like any other religion. And I tell them because Christianity is the religion that's trying to literally bring about fascism right now in our country. Christianity is like, and in my opinion, has been one of the biggest tools of human rights violations on the planet. And so when I'm arguing against Christianity, is because I don't want it here anymore. I don't want, like, if you want to be Christian, fine, go nuts. But I don't think it's good for the planet. Where do you come in when you have these conversations surrounding like atheism and like your viewpoint? Is it the case for you that you're like, hey, I want everybody to be the religion that they want to be? Or is it the case for you that you feel, this religion is directly targeting me?
Yeah, it's a hard one. So I feel like I have two answers, and one is the realistic answer, which is what I think can actually be done. And with that answer, I would say that realistically, we're not going to eliminate Christianity. It's not going to happen. If it does happen, it's going to be millennia. Like generations upon generations will die before Christianity stops, even if everything goes according to like my most ideal worldview or whatever. And I don't have anything against Christian people. Well, not Christian people in and of themselves. There's a lot of Christian people who I do have a problem with, but
yes,
I think realistically, I would like to see a world where Christians are calling out their own side a lot more. And there are some people doing this. The new evangelicals are a group that are trying to bring about a sort of progressive evangelicalism. April Ajoy is a big part of that, and she has a trans partner, a trans spouse. And so I think those are probably going to be organizations realistically that we're going to have to collaborate with to eliminate like Christian nationalism. And at least like, I don't want to take away people's right to believe anything. I would rather convince them through like compelling argument that there's not good reasons to believe a God exists. But that aside, that is like I like philosophy and argumentation kind of thing. I think a realistic approach is going to be, we're collaborating with progressive Christians towards shared goals. And I'm totally willing to work with allies over that. As an atheist, Richard Dawkins is an atheist. Jerry Coyne is an atheist. Steven Pinker is an atheist. These are people who are very regressive in their political views. Atheism says nothing about your politics or your valuing of human rights. Atheism is just the question of, do you hold a belief in a god or gods, right? I don't. So I call myself an atheist. Not making any hard claim about whether or not there actually is a god in reality. But when it comes to like my ideal world, I think I ultimately hold to a sort of like anti-theist worldview where I think that ultimately religion is teaching people to accept claims that they don't have sufficient evidence for in most cases. This is why we often use the word faith. Sometimes apologists will try to conflate two different uses of faith. There's faith, colloquially meaning confidence that my chair isn't going to collapse beneath me. But there's also faith in the Lord God, the magical sky daddy who sent his son, who is himself, to die on a cross to serve as a loophole to the rules that he created in the first place via a blood sacrifice, which he then rose from 3 days later, ultimately meaning it was really a sacrifice. Like, the whole thing is absurdist. And I think it teaches people to accept things on bad grounds. And I would really rather people root their beliefs in good reasoning, compelling evidence. I think that's how we get to anti-vax and things like this in society that ultimately harm broad swaths of people. But realistically, faith is, when religion is something that evolved with humans. It might even arguably be the reason that humans are such a dominant species, because we were able to unite in groups larger than our typical community sizes over shared ideas. There's really good cases for that. But I think we have reached a point in society where I would argue that religion is more of like a, what is the word for an organ that is no longer useful?
The gallbladder.
Like
you need the gallbladder?
Or no, you need the gallbladder. It's the appendix.
Vestigial. I got
vestigial. Vestigial. There you go.
Vestigial appendage.
Yes. It feels like a vestigial sort of thing where it's like it was useful in our evolutionary history. I'm not sure. it is helping us or holding us back at this point in time.
Well,
Yeah.
it's so interesting because people will always say, like, to touch on what we talked about a little while ago, when it's like, oh, well, we're a Christian nation. And I'm like, so? We also used to have slavery. Like, you don't have to stay
Right.
the thing you were to begin with. It's this, like, this fear of evolution, or almost like this fear, and I don't even mean, and I mean like just socially, like
Right.
evolving socially as people. I mean, that's, it's called conservatism, right? They want to conserve, they want to, stay where they are. And I don't know, it's very frustrating to watch when you do atheism conversations. Drop really quickly top 3 your favorite atheist arguments. Like, just rattle off your head. They don't got to be well thought out at the moment, but just top 3.
I mean, the number one is that I tend to not make any affirmative claims about a God existing. I'm just saying I have not been compelled to believe. A really good example of that is, like, imagine I have a jar of gumballs, right? There is objectively either an even or an odd number of gumballs in this jar, but nobody knows, right? If I say, well, I'm taking it on faith that there's an odd number because I have this holy book that's been around for 2,000 years that is believed by a third of the world's population, that says it's an odd number, and I'm just taking that on faith. I'm going to say, okay, you're allowed to do that. I'm not saying it's not odd. I'm just saying I have not been convinced that it is even or odd. I don't have to answer a question that I don't have an answer to. Like, often theists will point to like the Kalam cosmological argument, which is kind of this notion of, if everything has a cause, you're eventually going to go back to the start of the universe, where what caused the universe to start expanding, And I think there's flaws in this presumption in the first place, which is like, we don't know that something necessarily caused it, or that the universe has just always been this ever existing, expanding and contracting like force. Like, we don't have the answers to this. And so to make an answer, to make an assumption and say, oh, it's because God did it, you can do that, but you have no basis for that. That is just your conjecture. And I would say that you don't need to answer that question. You can say, I don't know. It's okay to not know the answer to a question.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the best arguments for atheism are, in a sense, not an argument, rather saying that just your argument was not compelling to me. And I think ultimately the only arguments that I've heard from religious people that have been compelling to anyone have been personal experiences that were only compelling to that individual. And I'm sorry, but personal experiences are necessarily first person. And like, that's just not something that's compelling to me as like a statement about reality. I absolutely believe that you believe, and I absolutely believe that you are convinced. But yeah, whether or not I think you're correct about your conclusions is kind of where I fall off.
I know because, I don't debate atheism technically. I just debate anti-Christianity, because I haven't looked into other religious texts, so I don't usually want to go there. But I know, for me, my favorite thing to do is just tell them that the Christian God is evil. That's my favorite. That topic is the most fun. And it's so interesting. I've read the Bible, not every passage, mind you, because it's a long book and it's kind of boring. But I have read the Bible, and I have perused the book. I shouldn't know more about the Bible than somebody who tells me that they are Christian.
So easy.
I had a person on who didn't know the story of Genesis. She did not know what God created and when. And I'm like, this shouldn't be a thing. I should not know this more than you. Yeah. And I just feel like, it's back to what we were talking earlier. It's just, there's such a lack of education on so many things right now. And now we're looking at the Department of Education getting defunded, half of the staff being laid off. It's, I'm so thankful for channels like yours, like The Line, being able to give. Obviously, no one's obligated to give an education, but being able to educate more. I think we're in that tipping point, almost like there's a critical mass. Oink. That's the name of the podcast. I don't know if we told you that.
Yes, I got you. That was good.
But there's this it's like we're so on the edge, and I don't know what the next 4 years is going to tell us, but I do know that we have a bunch of kids, a bunch of scared adults, a bunch of scared marginalized people who are so worried about their rights and their life and their ability to pursue the life that they want.
Yep.
Is there anything besides everything? Is there anything specific you're really, really honed in and worried about? Like any like it could be as hyper niche. It could be you saw one small thing somewhere, but that you're just worried is going to expand in the next 4 years.
I mean, the skepticism around medicine, I think, is the most concerning, right? I know measles cases have been identified in New York. There's been a second death because of vaccine. They say skepticism. That's kind of using skepticism in the colloquial sense of just doubtful of a proposition. But skepticism philosophically is rooting your beliefs in only the things that you can demonstrate, right? And so I would say that vaccines are the opposite. Anti-vax is the opposite of skepticism. That is somebody who is not rooting their beliefs in the actual evidence at all, but in doubt of the evidence that exists. Those are the things that I think are really concerning. And the thing is, when we look at some of these more religious communities, more fundamentalist communities, they have the highest incidence of these sort of anti-vax tendencies and, being a part of other groups. Like Mormons notoriously are also always really into these MLMs, right? Where you're selling fucking candles or yoga clothes or some bullshit.
Yep.
Mormons notoriously fall into MLMs and things like this. And that's my concern is I don't want people to be taken advantage of, right? Again, I'm not interested in taking away anyone's belief forcefully. I want to compel them through good logic and reasoning that they don't have good reasons to believe. Or if they do have good reasons, I want to know them so that I can also believe. I want to believe things that are true. But so far, they've been having this God debate for, several thousand years, and nobody's really made a compelling empirical case for God yet. There's a lot of Pascal's wager. Well, but what if? And it's okay, but you're not considering every other God, or they're appealing to, again, the Kalam cosmological argument, where you have to sort of make assumptions or, accept that things are being created ex nihilo, out of nothing. They come with a lot of assumptions that I think are just burdensome in a philosophical sense. You don't need to take on those burdens. And yeah, I don't know. I wish people would focus on improving the one life that we absolutely know we have.
Yeah.
I think it's uncontroversial that we have this life currently, right? Not you, but, or maybe you, I don't know. Somebody out there might think there's an afterlife of some kind, right? Of you right now. And that's cool, but we don't agree on that. But I'm willing to bet we almost absolutely guarantee that we agree that we have this life here right now. And so I'm more concerned with, I want to make this life good, this life as great as possible for as many people as possible. And if you're right and I go to hell, well then, darn tootin', what a shame. Or if I go to heaven with you, cool, awesome, glad that worked out. At the end of the day, I don't know that those things exist. I do know that this world exists. I mean, granted, that's a bit of a presupposition. You're kind of doing cogito ergo sum. Because I'm experiencing it, there's at least something here because I'm at least being fooled. Even if it's all a fiction or something. We agree that this life exists, and I think this one should be our priority, quite frankly.
It's actually funny. You made me think of that episode of The Office where they convinced Dwight that he's in the Matrix, and they're and he's eat this pill and you'll wake up, and he's like, nah, I'm good. It's
right.
Why would I leave? This life is great. Why would I go anywhere? And I'm like, you know what? Fair enough. You talked a little bit about, this, and I actually think it touches on most of what we've talked about today, is this new and weird distrust for medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's why we're into the Make America Healthy Again crowd. We're into the RFK brainworm crowd. We now have a group of people, and I fully understand. Listen, I'm a black man, so I fully understand not fully trusting the American healthcare system,
Sure.
not fully trusting doctors. Makes total sense to me. But I feel like there's such a difference between things like that and this new movement that is like everything. Microplastics are terrible. I don't think I think microplastics are overblown. Now seed oils, we can't have seed oils in anything.
Mhm.
Listen, I'm on board. Y'all want to get rid of red dye 40 and everything. I'm on board. It's made out of like ants anyway, so go nuts. I don't mind getting rid of red dye 40. There's obviously harmful stuff. We live in a system that pumps out really unhealthy food so that way you get fat and addicted. And
Yep.
so that way then you have gym culture that comes in and makes a profit off of the back of that. So I understand all of this. But like when you have fact-based evidence around vaccinations, and when we can see that vaccinations help lower hospital risk, help keep people safe, when we have the evidence for gender affirming care and like what gender affirming care can do both mentally and physically, because I talked to so many trans people whose
Mhm.
physical life got better when they were able to undergo gender affirming care. We have because of this weird stigmatization in America about mental health care. People often separate that from every other form of healthcare, which
Yeah.
is so weird. I'm like, this is still your body. This is still a physical thing that's happening to you. This is medical care. It's tough watching these institutions that have built up years upon years of good standing with the public just be thrown out because, frankly, a bunch of podcast bros
Yeah.
showed up. So I don't know how you feel about all of that, about just like this dismantling of our health. I don't even say healthcare system, but this dismantling of our healthcare education.
Yeah. I mean, and what's the most frustrating thing I think about it is it's not like they're throwing it out wholesale. Like if you watch, they'll accept the medicine and the science in certain domains when their life depends on it, right? Like all of these politicians who are doing this Maha bullshit guarantee you their kid gets cancer, they're taking them to a fucking oncologist, right? And if they have a heart disease, they're going to a cardiovascular surgeon, by the way, whose data is supported by like the American Heart Association, which also accepts the evidence for gender affirming care. So it's like, it's this arbitrary cherry picking and dismissal of evidence based on what fits their worldview and what's not. And I think when it comes to like the psychological care, I think that is an effect of, again, the sort of religious foundation that a lot of people in this country have, where there's this belief in this sort of soul, a ghost in a machine. And it's like, you are like corrupting your soul, by taking these medications. They change fundamentally who you are, rather than recognizing that like our brains and our social interactions are all a part of like you were saying, our physical bodies, our physical biology is just as social as like the sort of, our abstract constructs between us. Yeah. And I think it's a shame that people are willing to throw that out. There's so many, how many lives have been lost because of people dismissing evidence for healthcare without good reason. When you have like Jehovah's Witnesses who don't allow blood transfusions and things like this, like I have several friends who are ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who have seen people in their lives die. They let them die because they don't believe in the science behind blood transfusions. They could have saved that child's life, and their ignorance and their faith told them to not accept that evidence-based care. And I'm glad we live in a country where they have that right. But yeah, sorry,
This
go
is
on.
almost why I'm just saying, this is almost why I'm like, maybe you shouldn't have that right. Like I get it,
Yeah.
but like maybe there's something to be said. Listen, I don't want to say we should have a dictator, but like, let's just say a super benevolent one showed up who was like, I'm going to fix everything.
Superman.
And you lose a couple personal freedoms. Well, I don't know. It's such a weird line to walk
It is.
of like,
I
how
don't
much
think
personal freedom do you give someone if that personal freedom is going to harm the greater population.
Yeah, and I don't think there's like a clean 100% answer. I'm not pretending that because I have this like skeptical approach that I know all the right answers or anything like that. And I think there is a conversation about like maximal freedom, you're a theater nerd, like in Hamilton, they're talking about how independence is a contradiction, like having these systems that allow for freedom are also necessarily going to have to limit freedom so that as many people, some freedoms, that some people can have opportunities that others don't. Like we're trying to achieve maximal freedom, as many people having as much freedom as we can reasonably give them, while also having like the bounding box that a like social construct in society gives you.
Yeah, it's such a weird, not weird, but it's just such a balance. Now, obviously, I'd be remiss if I didn't let you talk about the reptiles. I know people are going to be interested. They're going to be seeing them in the background.
Uh-huh.
I understand special interests. I have them too. We both on the spectrum. What I can see. Look how excited you got.
Can't lie.
Okay. Tell us how you got into the reptile thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been super into animals. I was that kid who, before I was going to like elementary school, I would watch Animal Planet all day long and go running into my mom's room every like 10 minutes with a new fact that I just found out. And I was like, oh my God, mom, did you know this about foxes? And she'd be like, no, I didn't. I don't care, So I've always loved animals. And it was around college. Like my parents also didn't really let me, we had a dog, we had normie animals. They didn't really let me have more interesting animals that I wanted. And so when I got to college, it was kind of like, what animals can I responsibly take care of that are these more exotic animals? And the easiest answer is always reptiles. Reptiles are, obviously some of them require very specialized care and are actually some of the most difficult things to take care of. But generally speaking, like the snakes that are popular in the hobby, like ball pythons, there's a ball python living here. This is probably going to be a carpet python, and probably some boas will go in the bottom one. A lot of these really commonplace pet snakes are so easy to take care of. They're fantastic pets. They're extremely docile. There's really no risk. The only time you're going to get bit is if you are making it feel unsafe, or if you are about to feed it and then you like put your arm in front of the feeder mouse, like that, then it's going to bite you. But generally speaking, these are not hostile animals at all. They're very, very docile.
How many do you have? What's the number?
So I can't give you a hard number because I breed reptiles. And so I've always got babies coming in and babies going out.
Okay.
We don't exactly have the same problem that like dogs have, for example, in dog breeding, where there's shelters full that they're just like euthanizing dogs en masse. So it's over 150 probably. It's crazy. Yeah. There's probably about 15 different species of snakes. And I forget how many species of lizards.
I got the ick. I am never having dinner at Arden's house is what we've determined.
See, I'm determined to like take something to a pub though and have you hang out. Because my favorite thing is if you take a snake out in public, inevitably this thing happens where people will see it and they'll be afraid initially. They'll be like, ew, oh my God. But then I'll be like, do you want to handle it? And they'll be like, no way. And they'll walk away. And like 2 minutes later, they'll come back and be like, okay, I kind of want to handle it. What's going on here? And
funny, just a funny story that is somewhat similar to this. As you know, I go to Disney a lot.
Right.
And Animal Kingdom has a bird show. Now, I don't like reptiles. I also don't like birds. I want birds to stay away from me. Stay away from me. Birds are reptiles?
Yeah, you can't evolve out of a clade. Yep, birds are reptiles.
Maybe that explains why I hate birds so much. But so I went to the bird show because my friends wanted to go to the bird show, and I was like, okay. I asked the cast member on my way into the bird show, hey, where can I sit so the birds won't swoop near me? I don't want the bird coming near me. I hate birds. Keep it away. And they said, sit in these back bleachers. You'll be fine. When I tell you, a bird landed right here. Right on the thing behind me. right on the thing, but I was freaking out. My friends turned around and saw me, and they said that I looked more terrified than they've ever seen a human look in their life. Because I don't like birds. I don't want a bird near me. Don't touch me. So
That's so funny.
when you say they come back 2 minutes later, I'm not coming back 2 minutes later. I'm leaving. There's a snake in the bar. I want nothing to do with the bar for the rest of my life.
It might take me a minute to fish her out. If you want, I can get out my ball python in there. She's small. She's like a yearling at most. She's very, very tiny.
I think we have to do it. I think we have to do it.
I'll grab her.
I think we have to. As the last little thing of the podcast, I think we have to do it. For the audio listeners of the podcast, this is going to suck. So this is your cue to come watch the video edition of the podcast.
So this is citrine. She has 2 recessive genes and 1 incomplete dominant gene. Incomplete dominant gene just means she only needs 1 copy from 1 parent for it to be visually expressed. Recessive genes, if you remember doing a Punnett square when you're in junior high, it's like the little b. If you have big B, little b, only a quarter of them are going to be visually little b because you have to have 2 copies to have it expressed. She has 2 situations with this. So this is called a dreamsicle. She's got a pi gene, which makes her look mostly white with these saddles of color. And the saddles of color are orange because of a gene called lavender albino. And then it's got these bilateral stripes because she has a gene called orange dream.
Okay, pose for the thumbnail. Pose with the snake with the thumbnail. And I'll be in the thumbnail looking very disturbed.
You can see she's so sweet. There's no look. I can boop her, get all up in her face. I can hold her face. She's never going to do anything.
I believe that she's secretly plotting to take you. You know, this might be some religious trauma. Maybe it's because of the story of Adam and Eve. But right. I believe that this snake is secretly plotting your destruction. And one day it's gonna act.
Does that look like a face of destruction to you?
Yes. Yes, it does. Oh, I don't
but
like
she's barely even a yearling. This species gets up to about 4.5 feet on average. They can get up to 6 feet, but that's really uncommon and almost only happens in females. She is a female, but yeah. So
it's crazy. I'm 6 feet.
It's pretty crazy. They're most cities who have like restrictions on large pythons, that is like their cutoff, like 6 feet.
Because
is below.
What if someone flushes it down the toilet and then a snake comes in my toilet? I don't like
that. Wonderful cartoon world you live in.
It's happened. I guarantee I can find an example of this.
I would love to see a ball python from someone's pet collection finding its way into someone's toilet that didn't live in that house.
Snake in toilet. I feel like this is just gonna. Okay, it's all plumbers. Okay. This is what happens when you snake a bathroom. Bathroom snacks. Okay, nothing there. Anyway.
Yeah, they're just always. I've always loved animals, and I also love that they're kind of like they are like the rejects of the animal community because everyone's a little bit afraid of them, but it's mostly rooted in like not understanding their behavior or like how they engage. And
oh my god, am I an animal bigot?
I mean, okay, here's my spiel on fear of snakes. When you are walking about in the world, like the vast majority of snakes are non-venomous, right? A smaller subset of the ones that are venomous are actually dangerous to humans. And even then, they've done studies where they took like a fake boot and stepped on venomous snakes to try to engage them biting to see how often they bite. And it is like a fraction, like less than like 5% of the time will they ever even strike. Even then, when they strike, they'll almost always dry strike before they're going to envenomate you, right? So your risk of being harmed by a snake, even a venomous one, is extraordinarily low. That said, if you don't know the snakes in your area, snakes will never chase you. If you see a snake, stop, turn around, walk the other way, leave it the fuck alone. You will always be fine. And I always recommend that people if you don't know the snakes in your area, treat all of them like they are dangerous. Like that. I don't want people to be harming the snake or harming themselves because they don't know about the animal they're engaging with. But yeah, I mean, realistically, there's almost no risk ever, even engaging with I don't want you just free handling venomous snakes. You probably will get tagged. But if you are being smart, your risk of getting bitten is virtually non-existent. But still, you should treat all animals like they're dangerous. I mean, that you don't know. And I would rather people be overly cautious. That is kind of what has helped in our evolutionary history for us to survive some false alarms where we're reacting to things that are actually dangerous because it allows us to survive. It's better to be careful and wrong than not careful and wrong. Yeah, I was just kind of wondering, you've been doing some of this debate stuff for a while, and I know you're into theater and performance art and stuff as well. And I'm just kind of wondering what you are feeling about strategy going forward, because I know I've been trying to, especially since the election. Everyone at the line really rallied hard behind Kamala, not because we like Kamala or because we like the Democrats at all, but because we were trying to be this is our best chance at defeating Trump. So let's unite behind this and keep our messaging very consistent.
So it's so hard because it's first of all, as a self-proclaimed communist, right? I'm the thing that all of the Republicans talk about. I'm the Marxist, I'm the leftist, I'm all of the things. It's so hard because, as we can see from, and now that I'm going to say this out loud, I'm going to have to put the podcast out sooner, but we can see from what just recently happened with the budget bill, with Schumer and Fetterman and all these other Democrats voting against party lines because they're well, if we don't give the fascists what they want and their ability to be fascist, then they're going to be fascist. And it's okay, what do we do? Establishment Democrats really aren't interested in the progressive movement anymore. And we know the DNC, when you get candidates that how many people voted for Donald Trump who were Bernie bros? They wanted Bernie Sanders because Bernie Sanders talked to them about working class issues. And then they were disenfranchised because they saw what the Democratic Party did to them, what they did to Bernie and other super progressive candidates. And now here we are with, in my opinion, Democrats who are afraid to act out in any way. I mean, Al Green got kicked out of Trump's address to the House because he stood up and was doing what Republicans have done to Biden for the past 4 years. So what strategy do we have? This is the problem with fighting against fascism, is what do we really have? We know that if we start protesting now, they're going to try to arrest us. We know that if we try to combat with factual information, they're going to just outwardly lie. I mean, look at what happened with the transgenic mice thing. So I it's so hard. I mean, I've been in the camp of listen, education is paramount. Teaching people that what they know might not be correct is really important. So I guess that is the biggest one, is trying to get that educational side.
Yeah.
But when I look at what our strategy should be going forward, why are we not already right now, if we're saying we don't want to go with the Democrats anymore, I shouldn't hear about Jill Stein's campaign a year to 2 years before the election.
Yes.
I should be hearing about that campaign now. Exactly. If we want a third party option that is viable, they need to be campaigning now. And that's tough, but it makes me question something that I've been wondering for a while, is when we're going to get our first internet president. Because I think it's possible that somebody is able to run an effective campaign primarily online.
Yeah.
I don't know why we haven't seen that. I don't know who's the best person for that job. I don't personally think it's Jill Stein. I'd probably go Claudia de la Cruz before I go with anybody. A friend of mine, Jasmine Sherman, was running as a socialist for the Green Party as well. Mm-hmm. So I don't, it's just so tough, especially because we don't know where we're going to be in 4 years. They're trying to pass legislation to give Trump a third term.
Yeah.
What are we going to do at that point?
No, I absolutely agree. In the run-up to the election, like I said, we were all uniting really hard behind Kamala because, there was a lot of people who were calling in and being like, I am so opposed to the genocide in Gaza, and I don't want to vote for the administration that has been enabling this. And I was like, I completely 100% agree, and I align with you behind that. However, Trump is trying to turn Gaza into Trump Disneyland, right? And and Jill Stein, who's heard from her since the election, fucking nobody. She's crawled back down to the rock at the bottom of hell that she lives under, where she resurfaces to foil elections every 4 years. And I that's what I've been saying, the exact same thing, where I'm like, this is such a great time. Bernie's on this tour with AOC. My representative, actually, Greg Quesar, is going to be joining them for this like Fight the Oligarchy tour. And it's awesome. I love that. I want to see them establish a really strong like leftist or progressive party. I think like exactly what you're saying, now is the time for us to actually dig in and start this sort of thing. And I don't think Bernie can be the candidate per se.
He's
think
already announced he's running again.
Oh, has he? I didn't hear
I'm
that.
like 90% sure. I'll double check.
See, I'm not convinced he's a good candidate because we have a bit of a gerontocracy problem right now. But if it's like a him and AOC vote, they have my vote, no question about it. But yeah, I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about this too.
Yeah, he filed FEC candidacy papers for 2030.
Okay, 2030. Wow.
Wait, that's not our next election. When's our next election?
28 is the next presidential election. So it'd be 20. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe he's just running for re-election as senator. Maybe that's actually what maybe that's what it is. Because when is his next Senate term up? It would be 2030, right?
Yeah, I think that was,
yeah. So that's what it is. So I was mistaken. He's just running for re-election for Senate again.
Okay. Yeah, I think it would be a mistake to have him be the front runner, not because he's not my probably preferred candidate in his policies and the way he talks about these things. He is, but again, it's that sort of gerontocracy problem. I think having AOC or a similar type figure would be. I was really interested in Gavin Newsom, but he's decided to do the corporate Democrat shift towards the right move. So he's obviously gone out the window with the rest of them. But yeah, I've been having this thing a lot where I've been sitting and thinking on strategy, and I'm like, man, the election was in November. It is currently March. We're 5 months, coming up on 6 months out from the election day. And I still don't feel like I have a solid, clear idea of what my strategy needs to be and how we need to be mobilizing like our audience at the line yet. And I really think we need to start getting that figured out before long, because midterms are not that far away now, right? We're going to be starting those campaigns. And I think that is our best chance at potentially putting enough of a stopgap in to. Well,
here's the thing: we have to flip the House and the Senate.
Yeah,
we have to. We have to flip them. And personally, I would love to recall the Democrats, who are very clearly moderates.
Yep.
Who just needed a win on the Democrat ticket. So I'm very much like, we need to get these people out. Personally, I'm not the biggest Fetterman fan. I'm not the biggest Schumer fan right now.
Yeah.
I also think genuinely, and this is the one that I would most want to see. I believe that our Congress and our Senate should not be split 50-50, but should not be two parties.
Mm.
There needs to be in the House of Representatives a even split. Honestly, do you want to know? Let me go through some of my changes that I would make to our electoral system. First and foremost, I'm getting rid of 2 terms for president. It's gone. You get 1 6-year term. Because what happens 2 years into a president's first term anyway? They just start campaigning for their second term.
Yeah.
I'm done with it. I don't want that. Be in there for 6 years, do what you got to do, and then let's move on to the next person. Second, I'm capping at 65. Sorry. If you're over 65, go enjoy a beach somewhere. You ain't running for office. I don't care if it's ageist. Call me ageist. Hit me in the comments. I don't care. Number 3, I think if you are a representative, you have to live in that area. You cannot live elsewhere. I don't even think you should be able to own property elsewhere. Like, you should, when you become a representative, when you become a politician, I think you should be forced to live in government housing, like politician approved housing. You should not be able to own a company. In fact, I would almost say the 4 to 6 years that you're in office, you shouldn't be able to make any money save for your paycheck. Your taxes should be zero, should have nothing else on them at all. And then obviously I would get rid of lobbying and all that other stuff, but PACs are gone. Get rid of them. I don't want any corporate sponsored PACs. But realistically, like right now, our government is, and this is why Trump was able to win. Our government is corrupt. There is a lot of corruption in the government. And so he was able to win on this idea of, I'm going to drain the swamp, even though he's just been filling the swamp with more corruption.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, I think you're absolutely right that like PACs and lobbies and these special interest groups are one of the biggest threats to a truly free and fair democracy. I mean, let's be honest, right? Schumer didn't break with Democrats because he's a principled man who has a good argument. He broke because it was in his financial corporate interests for the people who fund his campaigns. Yep. And that is a problem we've had for a really long time. And yeah, I do see the problem with that. And I think this is kind of some of the messaging that I've been trying to use that I think is compelling. And it kind of lines up with the sort of Bernie-crat AOC brand of politics, which is also this like, again, every second that they're focused on someone like me is a time that they're not spending making your life better. Like the 99% of Americans, let's even roll that back for 100% Americans, because trans people are the Americans who benefit from those policies too, right? Like you could have a policy that benefits everyone, or you can have a policy that benefits no one and harms 1% of the population. Like, how do you want your tax dollars to be spent? Because how many hours are going into paying a staffer to write the text of that, executive order or drafting that bill? How many hours are spent of these people's salary on the floor testifying on behalf of these bills that help no one? Like, your tax dollars are funding this nonsense, and it's not doing anything to make your life better. And I'm really hoping that is the way forward, because like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've just been definitely radicalized, and we kind of talked about this on the line, and maybe this is a good segue into sort of this topic. I've been pretty radicalized following this election. Like I've always been very, very progressive, probably socialist leaning. I'm always hesitant to adopt a political label because I feel like there's potentially, I'm burdening myself with some principle.
Let me bring you over to the commie side, please. Come join us.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like the solidarity that I feel with the working class and what is inevitably going to be our united fight against the ruling class, it's strong. And I think that is our path forward. I mean, that's why Bernie is drawing these massive crowds, because like you're saying, like the same people who wanted Trump because he's anti-establishment, because he's going to drain the swamp, are the people who want to vote for Bernie because he's speaking to their actual interests, things that actually affect them on a day-to-day basis.
The one thing, not to Bernie glaze, but
glaze him. That's fine.
He pause, resume. The way he speaks to his audiences, it's very clear that he's speaking, like we talked earlier, he's speaking with empathy. He's asking them. One of the big things when you watch Trump speak, Trump tells you what the problems are. Trump says, no, your problem isn't that you can't afford to eat because you only get $1,600 a month on your Social Security and we aren't giving you cash assistance anywhere else. Your problem is the immigrants are taking all of the work and inflating the prices. Bernie will sit down with a crowd and go, what is the thing that's hurting you the most? Mm-hmm. And how does it feel, so that we can know how to address this? And obviously, I, as a little baby communist, care about working class solidation and class consciousness. I personally, this is one of the things, this is the hardest. When you asked me earlier, what's our path forward? I was in such a not negative place, but I was in such a doubtful mind space, because I was like, if COVID didn't radicalize everybody, what's going to do it? What is going to do it? COVID proved the working class the wealthy class does not care about us as the working class.
Absolutely.
COVID proved this beyond a shadow of a doubt. You saw people being forced to go into work for jobs that could be automated. You saw companies trying to get people back into the office as quickly as possible, even though we have so many studies that show that a 4-day work week is more productive, working from home can be more productive, a shorter work day can be more productive. What do? What is that thing that's going to make people wake up and realize that you are being exploited? And the only Elon Musk is working to exploit you. Donald Trump is working to exploit you, because if they can continue your exploitation, they can continue to get rich.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the thing is going to be that's going to radicalize people if it wasn't COVID.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. I mean, I think part of the problem is like growing up, my dad was a capitalist shill type, like very, very conservative, hated commies, like Red Scare kind of mindset. And there's always this notion of like people like that don't want to work. And it's like, oh no, I love working. There's nothing that makes me feel better than doing something productive and putting my nose in the grindstone to accomplish an important task. What I don't want is my money going to, a military industrial complex that's going to be helping aid in the genocide of Palestinians, that's colonizing other countries around the world and failing audits year over year over year, right? I would love it if my money was going to help even people like my piece of shit, capitalist, anti-commie dad, He's a total dickwad, but like he's got a heart condition and I think he deserves to have access to healthcare for that, but he doesn't think he deserves to have access to healthcare for that. And that's what's wild. Like I am more than willing to work my ass off. I just want those things to be going to things that are actually evidence-based, going to help people.
We live in a country where so many people are underinsured. So many people have no insurance. I mean, one of the things that radicalized me the most is finding out. Do you know how many homeless people there are in the US? How many houseless people there are?
I don't dare to wager a guess.
It's about 600,000, which, is a lot, but lower number than, most people would probably predict. Do you know how many unoccupied, as in no one currently lives in it, how many unoccupied homes exist in the US market?
I'm going to guess like at least 2 times as many, probably more.
16 million.
Yeah, okay. way more.
16 million unoccupied homes to 600,000 houseless people. What are we doing?
Well, they're all owned by Zillow, right?
It's just so I don't know what it will take to radicalize the right, or at least, because let me rephrase that, they have been radicalized. They've been radicalized in the opposite direction. I don't know what it will take to radicalize them to be class conscious.
Yeah.
I don't know what it will take to radicalize them to realize that by aligning themselves with billionaires, they are class traitors. I don't know what that thing will be. And it's so frustrating watching people go on and on. Elon Musk is the greatest businessman ever. His rocket just exploded over Florida because he doesn't know what he's doing. He's not a rocket scientist. He's an investor.
That's where my parents live.
This man tweeted that C-sections give babies larger brains. And he's in charge of a department on government efficiency now. Actually, he's not in charge, but he is in charge. But they said he's not in charge to avoid a lawsuit, but Trump said he is in charge. I hate that we're living in the onion. I didn't want to ever be living in the onion, but we're living in the onion.
Oh no, every article that comes out, it is a game of like onion or not. And I will say, I do think there are fractures starting to happen. I've been seeing more than ever conservative voices on like Fox News and pundits and things talking about, the reason the stock market is crashing is not just because Trump inherited what they say is a bad economy. The stock market was actually doing really well when Trump took office. It's crashing because of the uncertainty that he's causing to markets with threatening tariffs, taking them away, threatening them again, taking them away, back and forth, right? It's this
It's
lack of
because,
certainty.
and I have no evidence of this, but I mean, there is something to be said about a group of people who know that by saying certain things, they can cause the stock market to crash and prices on the stock market to go super low. And that by saying something else next week, you can cause the stock market to go up.
Mm.
There's something to be said. It's almost like you could be shorting something, but I have no evidence of this. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah.
But just seems I'm going to pull a Tucker Carlson. I'm just asking questions. I'm just asking questions.
I mean, we don't have to pretend that insider trading doesn't happen amongst Congress members and things like this. That's so been out in the open for far too long. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. I feel like I have seen more fractures, and it does make me feel that we are on the precipice of something that could go one of many ways, most of which are going to be really bad for a really long time, some of which might lead to some good conclusions, most of which I think probably do not. But yeah, I mean, I think there are cracks happening. I have seen more conservatives that I know, family members and things like this, than ever complaining that, they're going to the grocery store and eggs are definitely not going down in price, that their lives are getting measurably harder in just the short time that since Trump's taken office. And so, yeah, I don't know. I would like to think
But you know what's frustrating about that? You know what's frustrating about that?
What?
It just goes back to, not to put the debate hat on, but it goes back to how these people don't understand what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I'll bring up the egg thing. I'll be like, well, egg prices aren't down. And they're like, well, you guys kept saying presidents don't control egg prices. I'm like, you don't understand why we're talking about egg prices now? Could it possibly be that you were talking about egg prices then?
Yeah.
I was just like, what?
No, I mean, that's always their game, right? They do this all the time. And to be fair, I think probably all political parties do this. It's just kind of like rhetorical strategy in general to a certain extent. But like, yeah, I mean, it is their blatant hypocrisy. I at least feel like leftists that I know in like the debate space are inclined to be honest when we're called out on being mistaken or something like that, whereas the Republicans just double down, right? JD Vance posed for a photo op during the campaign in front of wholesale eggs, pretending that they were the cost of like regular eggs.
Donald Trump is doing Tesla commercials.
Yes.
On the front lawn of the White House. What are we doing? I feel like we started this podcast. It was so much like let's talk about this and we'll go. But now I'm just mad. Okay. What are we doing?
There's a lot to be mad about.
How a president is using his administrative sway to get people to bail out his top donor's company by buying their products. And we're just all okay with this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely horrifying.
It's an oligarchy. It's like you said, like that's all it can be labeled as. And I don't know how we wake up the Trump supporters. I don't know how we wake up the MAGAs. I don't know how we wake these people up and say, this is not in your best interest. You're going to lose access to Medicaid. You're going to lose access to Medicare. You're going to lose SNAP and welfare and housing benefits. You are going to lose everything because of how much you hate brown and trans people.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just going to be exactly that. They're going to have to feel it in their pocketbook. They're going to have to feel the pit in their stomach and being hungry because they can't afford the food that they want to eat to get by. It's going to take them, struggling to make ends meet and have all of their bills paid and all of their needs met before they really, I think, are moved. It's unfortunately this thing where it's like, this we were saying before the election, tariffs affect the consumer. Like the American importers pay them, they pass that down to the consumer. All of your goods and their costs are going to go up, especially when we're talking about like groceries, right? We import the majority of our produce, especially during the wintertime when things are out of season. Like
I was debating last night, right? And I had a kid come up who didn't understand. This is what they don't know. They don't understand how tariffs work. They have no idea. And it doesn't matter how much we scream to the heavens because they're getting all of their information from DTJ.
Right.
Donald Trumpithy Jimothy. They're getting all of their information from this one man, this one source. So this kid, no idea how tariffs worked. He was like, well, tariffs are paid by, you pay tariffs when you export stuff. So China's going to pay. I'm like, no, they're paid by the importer. And then we eventually got to the point, I was like, why do you think we import a lot of our produce? And he was like, well, because it's less expensive. I'm like, no, it's because some stuff doesn't grow here in en masse. I was like, why do you think 90% of rice is grown in Asia?
Right.
They have already cultivated the land. They've already been raising these crops, and they are in a more wet, humid climate, so it's grows easier. And he's like, well, we could just plant everything here. I'm like, you think we can take global food production and just plant everything in the limited space that is the United States?
Not to mention, like, just there's so many risks to protectionist policies like that. And like the benefits of having a free and open trade market with other countries is so good for everyone involved. It improves everyone's quality of life. Like, it's silly to like, there's a part of me that honestly gets it. Like, one thing of the conservative kind of mindset that my dad passed down to me that I do hold as sort of a prepper mentality, right? I'm like, I want to have like a farm where I'm growing my own food and I have chickens and I don't need fucking nobody. I understand that impulse, but it's like just not, it's not realistic. And two, it's just, there's so many more efficient uses of everybody's time. But yeah, it's absolutely true. They don't know. And it's just frustrating because we were saying this before the election. I can't tell you how many times I specifically talked about produce and how like all of our, like not all of our food, but a lot of our produce is imported. And so I'm like, you guys are specifically concerned about prices at the grocery store, that tariffs are going to punch you in the face next Christmas time when you go to try to buy your groceries for the holidays. And there's that rush where everything's marked up anyway. Like, they're going to squeeze you dry of every penny they can get. And yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but I do think we're going to be suffering a lot.
Now this is the other problem. Now they are wearing it like a badge of honor now.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually getting crazy because now it's this mindset of, well, yeah, I will pay more for this. This is a MAGA price, so I'm going to pay the MAGA price. I've seen people talking like this.
Yeah.
And it's like, conservatives just lie. Everybody pre-election was prices,
Mm-hmm.
prices. You just lied. It was immigrants, trans people. And right now we're seeing that a large portion of the population would rather hurt someone they don't like than protect themselves. I once had a woman, this is a long time ago on a debate. I don't even remember how we got there. But she was like, yeah, I would rather lose my reproductive rights than allow trans women in the bathroom. Like, I would rather vote for someone who's going to overturn Roe v. Wade if it means trans people don't come into my bathroom. And I was like, what are we doing? You're cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Yeah. I think you touched on a really good point, and it kind of ties back to strategy, which is like the honesty of their positions and knowing what kind of conversations to engage and what not. Like, I want to talk to those total nutters that you get, right, from like the YouTube Shorts algorithm, because it's good content. But at the same time, I often feel like it's not a good use of my time and energy because there's no honesty in any of their positions, right? At the end of the day, their value is I hate trans people, and whatever my corporate oligarchs tell me is the mechanism by which I should hate trans people is what I'll regurgitate. And so they do the trans people in sports, trans minors are getting surgeries. You know, they kind of appeal to these things that are like largely not real problems that affect anybody. And yeah, I guess I just don't always know necessarily like where my energy is best placed, because like the whole MAGA movement is an echo chamber, and that worked for them. And I'm like, do we need to be more insulating of our people and trying to sort of build up that same sort of messaging framework that they have in the media space?
Here's what we do. We take every MAGA supporter. We give them an island. Okay, we'll call it Magadonia, Magistan,
Max.
The Isle of MAGA. Honestly, part of me is just like, why not, like maybe we just split the country in half, like, and we just say, listen, if you want to be on the right, go to this side. You can have everything you want over there. We're going to stay over here. And let's just, like, I don't know what to do. What do we do when all these people don't realize that, like, the red states are propped up by the blue states? What do we do when they don't realize that, like, by alienating trans women from sports, you're now making weird distinctions that cis women are going to get harmed from?
Yeah.
What do we do when it's, by removing people that you believe are undocumented for X reason, you're going to be removing people that you're friends with, that you love, that you're family members? I don't know. This is why I keep saying that we're at a tipping point, and I'm so worried about where that dial is going to turn. Because if we don't get it back under control soon, we are going to see even more dangerous things happening to even more people.
Yeah, I'm definitely afraid. I was trying to urge people to be careful not to spiral into the blackpilling of all the possible outcomes for trans people prior to the election. A lot of people were concerned about camps or gulags kind of things. And, Elon's been posting about how Hitler's not that bad, and Trump is posting the Nazi pink triangles that were sewn onto the uniforms of queer people during the Holocaust. And it genuinely does feel like it's kind of moving in that direction. And I don't know. I still don't think it's wise for people to get too wrapped up in the panic and the fear of things that haven't happened yet. But it's becoming more and more of a realistic fear. And I definitely think people need to be like, I am, for example, putting together a go bag. It's going to sit by my door. So basically, at a moment's notice, if need be, I can book it.
The expat movement is getting big.
Yeah. And it's a shame because, America has a lot of problems, both in our history and in our systems and like how we structure everything. I do feel like I deeply fundamentally believe in like the mission of America as it's mythologized, and would really like to stay and fight. I wish I could stay and fight in Texas, but Governor Abbott issued guidance yesterday saying that documents who have had IDs, licenses that have had the gender marker change need to be voided and replaced. So I'm assuming that I'm going to be getting a new license in the mail sometime in the next few weeks that has an M on it. And, which is so silly because in order to get the F on that in the first place in Texas, I had to go to a county clerk judge and show him that this is not an attempt for me to evade fraud, that this is genuinely a sincerely held identity that I have, and to get that marker on there. But yeah, it's definitely getting tense, and I think everyone should be ready to have their own sort of go bags in place. And I don't know if I can recommend you a specific location to go, but be prepared to go, I guess. That's all I can say. Be watching out for your health and all that stuff.
I've gone through so much. I don't know much of anything else. Do you have anything else, Arden, that you want to talk about?
I mean, I can just put a button on it, I guess. Kind of wind it down. I want people to realize that, like, I think I'm just going to hammer on the same message that I've been doing before, which is that, like, by every time they focus on trans people, that they focus on immigrants in our community who are, committing less crime than citizens. this is a moment that they spend your taxpayer dollars, which fund their paycheck, by the way, their salary, is time that they spent with that money not helping you, not helping the working class, not making your life better, not making your healthcare better, not making sure your kids are safe in school or that they can eat food in school, not making sure that your housing prices are affordable. None of the things that they promised or said they would do are getting accomplished when they're focusing on immigrants or myself. It's hurting us and it's hurting you. And I want to have policies that work for everyone. And so I really hope that we can all rally behind the class, awaken our class consciousness and start to move towards a stronger fight against what we're seeing, because we need more people rallying, man. The left is so diminutive, standing next to the media beast that the far right media ecosystem has. And I don't know, until we start getting more voices in the fight and pushing, I think people like Jovan and I are taking on a lot of, not that it's like such a burden that we sit here and stream for a living, but like we are out here fighting every day and it's exhausting and we need more hands on deck, I think. So yeah, we're getting into a 5-alarm fire situation. That's kind of my last thoughts on this, I guess, conversation.
Well, Arden, we're obviously going to have your social links to everything in the description of the video. But if you want to tell people where they can find you, where they can follow you, if you want to plug any upcoming streams for the line, although I don't know when this episode's going to come out, so don't plug anything super immediate.
Sure.
But if you want to plug some stuff, now would be the time and the space.
Yeah, I go by the Arden Hart everywhere. You can see me on the line. I host the Transatlantic call-in show every Thursdays at 2 p.m. Central Time there. We always have, our hosts are always trans people, and we're taking calls from anyone on like basically everything trans related. So if you want to talk to us about any topic that you're maybe delivering it about and you want kind of answers to, or you want to hear what trans people's actual response is, not just what the far right says our position is, because they are almost always misrepresenting. That is a place where you can get access to that information. I'm slowly building towards making up my own content, but man, I produce like 70
you
plus,
do a lot.
plus 70 plus clips a month for the line. So I don't always have a lot of time, but I'm going to be working on it. I'm going to find the time.
I am patiently awaiting my next ask. Just over here waiting for when Arden wants me to come join them again.
We'll get you back. We loved having you. The audience loved having you, and you did a killing. So yeah, we'll have you back. No question.
But yeah, thank you so much, Arden. Thank you for coming on and telling us your story and talking with us. Just a reminder, everybody, there is a Patreon. There will be a segment coming up that will talk to you about the Patreon. Because I don't have all the details right now because this is the first time we're filming. So thank you for listening/watching Critical Mass. I've been Jovan Bradley, joined again by Arden Hart. Thank you guys for watching, and goodbye.
Thank you for listening and watching the show. Critical Mass is a production of Red Mirror Media, a left-leaning production studio based out of Orlando, Florida. We aren't conservative, we aren't liberal, we are Red Mirror. Thank you again to Arden Hart for joining me on this episode. You'll find all of Arden's links in the podcast description. On our next episode, we'll be joined by a brother and sister duo who are using podcasts to have necessary conversations with their parents. Please follow Red Mirror Media on all platforms. And special thanks for this episode to Frank Fasano. I've been Jovan Bradley, and this has been Critical Mass.